Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Crushing Land series, our second episode. We're happy to have you here with us today. We got great feedback from our last episode. And we know a lot of you have actually already taken that and used it in your business. So we're happy to bring you another one today. This one's about maximizing profits in a self-directed IRA. So regardless of where you are in your business, if you're just starting out in your land business, if you're already a seasoned investor, this is something you want to look at. If you're, depending on your age, it doesn't matter either. If you're younger or if you're older, this is something that you want to look at to maximize profits and to plan for retirement or to be able to offset taxes, things like that. And that's all going to be discussed today. This is something that we've used in our family business as well. With investing in properties, Genus, our business partner, he's already done this as well. He's known of these folks for years and has worked with them. Just did a deal not that long ago in his IRA. And so we wanted to invite them on, let them talk to you about this, help you see the potential as well. So we're going to get right into it. So I'm happy to introduce Ramez today. He's joining us. He's the vice president of the IRA Club. And he's going to give you some very good information that you can use to start right off in your land investing business or in real estate investing in periods. So we'll turn it right over to him and hope you guys enjoy this content for you today.
Jonathan, thank you for the kind words as always. It's always a pleasure to work with you and your company. As I share my screen, please give me 1 second. There we go. Just want to make sure, Jonathan, can you see that?
Good.
Thank you so much, sir. All right. So as Jonathan, before we get started again, one of the reasons why I really do like Jonathan and his team is they practice a lot of what we preach, which they put education first and foremost. And that really for us is the forefront of our company, the IRA Club. So when you talk about the IRA Club, we are a Chicago-based company that administers retirement accounts, and specifically self-directed IRA accounts and or solo 401k accounts. Now, when you think of IRA Club, we deal with the alternative space. A lot of people that we talk to, whether it's a live event, a podcast, a symposium, a conference, or any of those in nature, we find out that 97% of Americans all leave the retirement funds typically in 3 places, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But with the IRA Club, I want you to think of, when you think of us, this is what I want you to look at. As I said, 97% of Americans leave their funds in traditional forms of investing, like think of Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, or TD Ameritrade. They only allow you to invest within stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. Whereas at the IRA Club, we allow you to invest in alternatives such as land. Since we're using the topic of land, that's what we're going to give the example of. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it. But before we do, I like to always give this disclaimer. IRA Club does not provide tax, legal, or investment advice. We do not endorse any products, services, or the actual investment itself, okay? All of the things that we're going to go over are for educational purposes only. All parties are encouraged to consult with their attorneys, CPAs, and financial advisors before they jump into any type of investment opportunity. Before we talk about the self-directed IRA, I want to talk a little bit about the history behind a self-directed IRA. As we all know, it stands for Individual Retirement Account. It was established back in September 2nd, 1974. The real issues and the reasons why Congress actually wanted to create the Individual Retirement Account was for these reasons, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit again about the past and what's going on right now and where it's going to lead into the future. When it was first introduced back in 1974, it was really the Treasury Department that actually reached out to Congress, and it basically said, listen, we see the gaps, we see where this is going, we're going to face some real issues moving on in the future, and they weren't lying. As of today, the average retirement account, I'm talking about all retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, any qualified retirement account, has an average of only $32,000. That's a staggeringly low number. We also know that fewer pensions are being offered. We know back in 1974, obviously the bigger companies were offering all different types of pensions. Today, 2021, fewer and fewer companies are offering them. We also know the state of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. These are government programs that were launched. Social Security, we know this back in 1934, right after the Great Depression. If you take a look at these staggering numbers, back in 2021, Medicare and Medicaid, you're talking about $722 billion was dished out because of this pandemic. $448 billion for Medicare, and Social Security hit an all-time high at $1.15 trillion. The problem is we cannot sustain this for much longer. So some changes need to be made. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But think about this. 28% of people over the age of 55 don't even have a retirement account. And the people that are of the age of 55 only have an average of a little over 175,000. To make matters worse, that number is going to get worse because 40% of millennials haven't even started. The average person over the age of 65 receives a check of $1,500, which is not taxed, by the way. And remember when Social Security first started back in 1935, there were 24 workers for every one retiree. As of 2021, there are 2 workers for every one retiree, and that number by 2030 is going to be 1 to 1. That is because Americans are living a lot longer. Okay, what does that tell me about Social Security? One of 3 things are going to happen. Number 1, either the checks are going to get less. Number 2, we're going to get taxed higher on Social Security, which is one of Biden's proposals. Or number 3, we're going to raise the age of when we can receive Social Security. I know we qualify at 62. We could start pulling at 62. We qualify at 65. They're actually talking about pushing that up closer to 70 years old. So keep all of these things in mind. But what we need to do is face reality right now as Americans, because 2 things have played even a bigger factor on top of everything else that I just mentioned. We're talking about inflation and now taxes. These are 5 breathtaking numbers that was actually written by the Washington Post a few months ago. And what it states is, if you take a look at these breathtaking numbers, we're talking about a total of $9 trillion. The problem is Biden has made it very clear, again, whether it was going to be Biden and or President Trump, we knew that this was coming. All right. We knew that tax hikes were coming. And he's made it very clear that in 2023, that will be the first initial hike. So for the first time ever, I would say the Treasury Department, that's always clashing with Congress, are in full support of each other. And that's because they have no choice. But who's it really targeting? It's targeting investors. It's targeting corporate America. So some of the things that I want to showcase is, now, do I feel like all of these things that we're going to talk about are going to pass? No. But what he's talking about reducing are these tax brackets of how much you make per year. So let's just start with the highest of 518, reducing that to 400. For example, reducing or possibly eliminating the 1031 exchange. Eliminating, I feel that's extremely far-fetched. Reducing, their proposal was, we'll waive the first 500,000 and then you're going to be taxed on the rest. Now, we already know about the long-term capital gains tax. It affected the market the very same day that they announced it, and they were talking about removing the 20% to whatever tax bracket you fall into. Now, most Americans are between the 22 and 24% tax bracket. With that being said, you automatically, that jumps 2 to 4%, and much higher if you're in the 32, 35, or 37% tax bracket. So a lot of people pulled their money out of the market. Did it recover? Yes, but we'll get into that a little bit later. These are staggering numbers. Okay. Now, again, taxed up to 60%. Doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to be taxed up to 60%, but I want to break down some of the numbers. As I mentioned, they want to increase the maximum tax rate from 37 to 39.6. Talking about Social Security, anybody who makes over 400,000, passive and or active, they're talking about doubling that to 12.4%. They want to bring back the net investment tax of 3.8. So anybody who generates any type of passive income, whether it's rental, a syndication, land, for instance, they're talking about bringing that at 3.8, and the state income tax. Now, this is an average of 5%. I know some people that may be listening live in Florida or Texas, but such as IRA Club. We are based here in Illinois. I live in Illinois. We know that taxes are high at 7%. Some people may be listening from California. That's 13.3%. So again, this is an average of 5. You just hit that number to whatever state that you live in. So that's where I come up with the 60%. So think about that. If you are making over $100,000, the government's talking about taking 60% of that. You're left with $40,000 to live off of. Again, that is a hard pill for me to swallow because, truth be told, I would fall into this tax bracket. So the $1 million question that we receive quite often is, how do you get rid of this man? This greedy man that's always got his hands in your pocket. And you have the opportunity to grow your investments by getting rid of this man by 25 to 50%. And again, I'm going to break down some numbers a little bit later so you understand how crazy this could really affect you. And truth be told, the self-directed IRA, as the president of our company refers to it, is a gift. It's a gift that just keeps on giving. All right. Full transparency, self-directed IRAs. Self-direction is just a marketing term that we use in our industry. All right. All retirement accounts are self-directed. You chose to open up your 401k at Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab. You chose to have an IRA at IRA Club or one of the other, classic brokerage firms or trust company, or if maybe you have a broker and or fiduciary that's managing your account. Self-direction, again, is about, and I will get into it, 3 real categories. But the 2 that I really want to concentrate on, because they take up the bulk, there are many different types of IRA accounts, which is traditional and Roth. The only difference between the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA is when do you pay the taxes. With the traditional IRA, the funds are tax deferred. So what does that mean? You would take the tax deduction up front and you would use that money to invest. However, you would pay the taxes later on in life after the age of 72, which is known as a required minimum distribution. The flip side to this is the Roth IRA. Everybody here at the IRA Club, we all favor the Roth. I have a Roth IRA and I also do have a traditional, but we all favor the Roth IRA because why? You pay the taxes up front. You don't take the deduction, but everything moving forward for the rest of your life is tax free. The only time that you could pull out these funds is when you're 59 and a half. But the Roth does have a couple more advantages than the traditional. Whatever you contribute to it, you could pull out at any time. So keep that in mind. And you could also pass it along to your spouse, tax-free, and your heirs, your family members, your kids, whoever it is that you want to pass it along to. So they also have those advantages and they don't have to wait until 59 and a half to start pulling out those funds. So that's another reason why I do favor the Roth. So what are the real benefits behind a self-directed IRA? Number 1 is diversification. All right. As I mentioned, 97% of Americans traditionally keep their funds within stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. Truth be told, you can't have that mindset now more than ever. Everything is working against you if you do have your funds within the stock market, right? If it's within a mutual fund or ETF. Now, I want to again be clear. I have nothing against the stock market. I made a lot of money in the stock market. But again, because of this pandemic, you need to shift the way you think. You need to diversify. All of your eggs cannot be in one basket. With that being said, self-direction gives you control and power to do what you want for a fraction of the cost, by the way, of what traditional brokerage firms would charge you. It gives you the availability to invest in what you know and understand best. And let's not forget the icing on the cake, the tax savings. As I mentioned, you could potentially grow your returns 25 to 50% faster, depending on how much and the longevity of the account or the investment. But what is the problem that we're facing as Americans? People just don't know about self-directed IRAs. They don't understand the concept. And it's not something you ever were brought up with. I mean, think about this. How many times have we sat, during the dinner table growing up with your mother, father, and did the conversation of IRAs or 401ks ever really come up? No. Has self-direction ever come up? No. Do people know about this? No. So again, where do people traditionally keep their retirement accounts? Because of this herding method that we've basically been accustomed to, the whole set it and forget it model. which we cannot, again, do moving forward. But traditionally, it's banks, insurance companies, and the stock market. Banks were the first to capitalize back in 1974. What did they offer? They offered a CD. I'm not getting into great detail about CDs because the average return of investment within a CD is only 0.5%. So if anybody's listening right now, you should never, ever, ever, ever consider opening up a CD within your IRA and or your own personal funds. It's a waste of time because we're going to get into inflation a little bit later. Insurance companies are the next to capitalize, and their product were called annuities. Now, there are two different types of annuities. Actually, there's four different types of annuities, but two, I'm so sorry. The one in particular that I want you to be aware of is the fixed income annuity. And ultimately, what they guarantee or what they preach is you don't have to worry about the stock market. They traditionally spend a lot of money marketing to people between the ages of 45 and 65, because those are the people who actually have enough money saved up within their 401ks, 403bs, 457s, on and on. Now, when I say they're marketing, they're traditionally marketing to larger companies, letting people know, hey, you know what? The stock market's very sketchy right now. There's going to be some sort of correction. Inflation is not working in your favor. So what they'll guarantee you is a certain percentage, depending on how much money you want to roll over into the 401k. I'm sorry, into the annuity, but I will get into those numbers just in a split second. And lastly, the stock market. The stock market, their main product is a mutual fund in ETF. And that's where, and I want to tell you, that's the bulk. And I would say 70% of the $34 trillion that's sitting within retirement accounts is sitting within a mutual fund and an ETF. Now, the one I told you I wanted to concentrate, let's break down some numbers. Again, I just always like using simple math. So I told you that an income fixed annuity is between 3 and 5%. Hypothetically speaking, let's just say you receive a total of 5%. Now, if you're planning on rolling over, let's say $100,000 from your 401k over into an annuity, and you wanted to say retire at the age of 60, you're guaranteed $421. But the real question in my eyes is, they said you're going to be receiving 5%. Okay. And that's on the high end. Do you think that they're using your $100,000 to pay you back that 5%? And the answer to that question is yes. The other things that you need to worry about when it comes to annuities is the way the contract is structured. Okay. Ultimately, annuities always win because, God forbid, if you stepped outside and let's say you got into a bad car accident and there's an early, death that happens to you early. I don't want to wish that upon anybody, but I'm using this example. Ultimately, they win because they keep the $100,000. And then what they can do is say, you know what, if that's what you're worried about, let's go ahead and open up another life insurance policy for your family. So they're basically paying that from your $100,000, they're paying the premium. So they're betting ultimately that you're going to pass away, and they keep the $100,000. So just keep that in the back of your mind. The other one that I want to talk about is really are annuities. Okay. Annuities. And when you think of when you think of mutual funds and annuities, I want you to think of the classical brokerage firm, the Fidelities, Vanguard, Schwabs, and TDs of the world. I call them the four horsemen in our industry because, again, they own over 70% of all retirement accounts. So when I like to break down numbers, when you think of mutual funds, they're typically broken up into 7 categories: large, mid, and small stocks, and international, and bonds. So when you look at it, let's look at 3, 5, 10, and 15 years. Take a look at these numbers on the bottom: 6, 8, 7, and 5, a little under 6%, please forgive me, at 15 years. Most people are saying, well, I made 10 plus, 12 plus, 13 plus in 2020 within my mutual fund. All right. No, you didn't. Remember, the government bailed you out. If you take a look at the first quarterly loss, it's first quarter of 2020 was the worst quarterly loss at 24.7%. And truth be told, again, we had no choice. The government had no choice but to put in the $9 trillion to stimulate the economy, because you're talking about not just a U.S. meltdown, but a global economic meltdown. So with that being said, don't look at the 10% of this year. Take a look at the last 10 or 15 years. Those are the numbers that you really need to be watching out for. And inflation. Inflation's on the rise. If you take a look at the last 12 months, as of July 2021, it's at 5.4%. Everything is working against you right now. Your money should never stay stagnant. It should never just sit in a savings account. You'll be losing close to 5.4%. So for every 100,000, you're losing $5,000. Think about that. If you are making 10% according to the market, you are losing 5.4%. You have to look at alternatives. Why? Okay, the way to ride the inflation wave is to look at alternatives. Truth be told, the IRA Club has never been busier as it is right now, the last 18 months. Because savvy investors, people who traditionally understand how inflation works, they don't keep their money in the market. They look at alternatives. That's where it works in your favor. You have to ride that wave, because I feel like that wave is here to stay for the next 5 to 10 years. Take a look back at the 70s. Inflation ran at almost 6% for those 10 years. So those are things that you need to be wary of. These are the reason why you need to look at diversification. This is the reason why you need to look at alternatives, because it works in your favor when it comes to inflation. Now, here's the other issue. Okay. As I mentioned, mutual funds traditionally are giving you about 7 to 8%. If inflation's at 5.4, that brings you down to about 2 or 3%. Most people never think and talk about the fees that are structured within a 401k, 403b, an IRA, or 457 with these traditional brokerage firms. These hidden fees are structured within the statements. You never see them coming. I always ask somebody, when was the last time you looked at your statement? A lot of them just shrugged their shoulders. It would be a good time for you guys to look at that. So if you know that inflation's at 5% and it could be an average of 2%, again, lowballing it, that's 7%. You're basically going to stay stagnant for the next 5 years if your retirement account is sitting within a mutual fund or an ETF. Keep that in mind. Also, who's taking all of the risk? Most people do not understand this. If the market is up, that is the only time that you get paid. If the market stays flat, as I mentioned, that's your best case scenario for the next 5 years. You don't get paid. Does Wall Street get paid? Does the Fidelities, Vanguards, and Schwabs of the world get paid? Yes. If the market is down, obviously you don't get paid, but do they still get paid? Yes. And most people don't understand if they're rolling over their 401ks. I've seen this a lot during this pandemic, because a lot of people that were furloughed or lost their jobs during this pandemic just took their 401k funds and rolled it over to their current employer. So they locked in those dollars. You need to be aware of that. If you decide that that's the route that you want to go, your assets could be tied up within that traditional brokerage firm for 20 to 30 years. Just depends on how you want to approach it. And this is also funny to me, because history also always has a way of repeating itself. The stock market always seems to have a pattern. Take a look at it. Go back from day one when it was first brought on board. But if you look at it, every 8 to 12 years, what goes up must come down. If you look at the 2000 dot-com bubble, people lost 40% plus. If you were within a tech company, you were talking about 75, 80% plus. The Great Depression. We all know what happened. Overzealous banks just giving out loans to anybody that they wanted to. As long as you had a pulse, driver's license, go ahead, you could get a loan. We know what happened there. People lost 40 to 50% of whatever they had within their retirement account. That's what's scary, because your funds are tied into the company of which you work. So it is the company plan. Now, 2021 is here. We don't know where 2021 is heading. The reason why I bring that up to you is these are very scary times for people between the ages of 50 and 60 thinking about retirement. This is where we've seen a lot of activity here at the IRA Club. People are looking to either, one, retire early and pull those funds out so they can look at alternatives. That is a possibility. It doesn't hurt to ask your HR company, if you are over the age of 50, can I pull out a portion of my retirement funds to look at alternatives? Doesn't hurt to ask. I will tell you 8 times out of 10, they're probably going to say no. But if you don't ask, you don't know. But the reason why I want to take a look at this retirement economic recovery calculator, again, simple math. If you have $100,000 sitting with your current employer, all right, and you take a 20% hit, because every economist is saying there is going to be a correction, whether it's 10, 15, or 20%, there's going to be one. It just has to. So if you are just looking at this at $100,000, you take a 20% loss, again, simple math, it brings down the value to 80. Let's just say you keep contributing $6,000 per year. Why am I using 6,000? Truth be told, the average American only saves 6% of their salary each year. That's why I came up 6% of 100, that's 6,000 annually. Now, where did I come up with the 7% I just mentioned? That's where it's traditionally at. Inflation at 5.4%, as I mentioned. It will take you 2 years and 8 months to get back to $100,000. I just want you to understand you cannot not afford to lose almost 3 years. And that's best case scenario if it does go 20%. So if you are, again, between the ages of 50 and 60, this is a very scary time for you. You need to be looking at alternatives. Again, I have nothing against the stock market. We have a lot of clients that do both. It's completely up to you. We're just here to educate you on options. Okay. But here's the funny thing. As I mentioned, every American has the perfect source of funds to generate tax-free or tax-deferred gains. Because of this pandemic, believe it or not, over 70% of Americans have access to these trillions of dollars. If you're looking at 401k funds, you're talking about $11 trillion. If you're looking at IRA funds, that's $14 trillion. Prior to 2019, pre-pandemic, it was $9 trillion. This last year, it jumped to $14 trillion, $5 trillion. That is because as people got furloughed or lost their jobs, they rolled over their funds over to an IRA account. Whether it was self-directed or not, this number has jumped astronomically. $5 trillion is no joke to anybody. So most Americans have access to these funds. Why not utilize them if you know that you could grow your retirement 25 to 50% faster by looking at alternatives? This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Again, simple math, always simple math, $100,000. You don't contribute a single dollar. You're currently of the age 50. I'm using 50 because I really want to target people. I want people to understand that are thinking about retirement sooner than later. If you take and look at an alternative investment for 12 years, so 50, and you're looking at retiring, let's say at 62 outside of the market. If your expected rate of return is 12%, why am I using 12%? 12% because that is extremely, extremely common and not far-fetched when it comes to real estate deals, land, syndications, anything of that nature. 12% is extremely common and very obtainable. Marginal tax bracket at 29%. I mentioned most Americans are between 22 and 24%. I'm adding the 5%. All right, that's 29,000. I'm not including Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security, or any of that. If you were to punch in those numbers, you would save $100 and almost $23,000. Okay, you went from 268 to 389 in those 12 years, with inflation working in your favor. So when you look at this, forgive me, this 12% expected rate of return, it is no longer 12% when you're using a Roth IRA and or traditional, because if you're saving 123, that number jumps to 18.5%. That is the power of a self-directed IRA. That is the power of utilizing it for within alternatives. That is the reason why you should consider it diversifying, that is, because the gains are that much better. 32% of Americans that are in the 32% tax bracket or higher, this is what they do. They don't only utilize their own personal funds, but they use their retirement funds to grow and get rid of Uncle Sam, to grow their retirement accounts that much faster by getting rid of Uncle Sam. Forgive me. So these are the things that I want you to be weary of. These are the things that I want you to understand. If you have the availability to do so, look at alternatives. That is one of my reasons why I do this is, again, educating, getting the word out, letting people understand that you have options. And the process is really simple, okay? One of the biggest misconceptions that we hear, that people who we do talk to on a regular basis or at these, massive events, 500 plus people, is it's extremely difficult. We don't understand it. This is difficult. My advisor says it's extremely risky. Well, truth be told, your advisor needs to have those funds within his brokerage firm because that's how he ultimately gets paid. If you have a great registered investment advisor, he would pitch the self-directed. That means you have a great fiduciary, and you should keep him, to be honest with you. But the process is really done in 3 simple steps. And this is what we do. As they say, I don't like to toot IRA Club's own horn, but this is what we do better than most. Number 1, open up the account. It takes 8 minutes. It's $195. Any one of our IRA Club specialists could do this on your behalf. Funding the IRA, there's 3 ways that you could do that. You could do that by doing a contribution of $6,000. If you're over the age of 50, that's 7. The most common ways are these next 2, which is a transfer, an IRA to IRA transfer, or a rollover from an old employer to the IRA Club. With an IRA to IRA transfer, you do nothing. Our transfers team does everything for you. All you have to do is say the amount that you want to roll over, and that's all you have to do. Now, when it comes over to a old employer's 401k, 403b, or 457 or TSP, unfortunately, a lot of these brokerage firm or trust companies, they will not deal with the IRA Club, but we will help walk you through this process. Okay. And lastly, choose the investment. That is the one thing that the IRA Club cannot do for you is choose the investment. And that is because the way our fees are structured, they're much lower than, let's say, a Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab. Where I just mentioned to you, it could be anywhere between 2 and 3% when you incorporate the expense ratio fees and the hidden fees. At the IRA Club, it is a flat fee, $195 to establish the account, and then per asset is $125. So you're talking about, please forgive me, $340 when you incorporate also the wire transfer, because we do want you to do the wire transfer on your first go round. The next year after that, it's $300. So keep that in the back of your mind. So again, this is my contact information. Anybody who wants to set up a one-on-one, feel free to reach out to me, Ramez at iraclub.org. Our telephone number is 312-795-0988. Our website's iraclub.org. Again, before I do want to thank you, I want to really preach what it is that we are talking about by offering something to Jonathan and his team. Please forgive me as I pop this up. So here is the IRA Club website. So one of the things that we created because of this pandemic, and we used to travel all over the country, was a product called the Investor's Kit. Remember, education is our forefront. This is what we do first and foremost, is just getting the word out there. The Investor's Kit was actually created by me, Dennis, Kasha, and Vanessa Neely. And what it is ultimately, for the exact same price of opening up an IRA account at $195, we created an actual video library that walks you through this whole process. I could sit here for honestly hours upon hours talking about so many different subjects, but I did mention to you what is a self-directed IRA, but you could learn about backdoor Roths, Roth conversions, how to partner your IRA with a loved one, a spouse, a friend, yourself, the importance of naming a beneficiary, lending, prohibited transactions, on and on and on, investable HSAs. But we want to practice what we preach, and we offer, for the same value of the $195, we give you a free IRA account. Not to mention, Dennis's latest book is the author of 14. This is his 14th book that he's published. The White Glove Experience. What is the White Glove Experience? What we've created here, again, is a true system of checks and balances. Every single one of our clients has an IRA Club specialist walking them through the whole process. We're not a call center. Let me repeat that again. We're not a call center. So if you call here, you get the receptionist, and I would like to speak to, Alex, Kat, Kasha, any one of the 15 client care specialists that we have. But what I really want to do is, because education is such a big part, is if you punch in your first name, last name, email, all of this great information, and put in the promo code Crushing Land, all in caps, one word, and hit and just hit apply. Obviously, I don't have a credit card number. Oh, forgive me. Crushing Land.
It's maybe backwards. That's what.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. Oh my God. Forgive me. There we go. Sorry, I got the mic. You received the kit for $1. So that includes the free IRA account. That includes the videos. I want you guys to further educate yourself. Remember, you have also the free IRA account. That's the key to everything. All right. We'll establish it on your behalf. You have any questions, you walk us through it. And that is the goal of what we do here at the IRA Club. That is one of the reasons why Jonathan and Jean use the IRA Club, is the accessibility that you have to our team. We streamline the process and we make it very easy for you to understand. And what we're ultimately, again, trying to do is, by educating you, we're trying to reduce risk. Okay. The only thing that we can't do is pick the investment for you. Okay. For $300 a year is much lower than having an account, let's say, with a traditional brokerage firm. Jonathan, do you have any questions up until this point? Have we had any questions up until this point?
We've had a couple pop up. One thing though, real quick, because we're talking about this from a real estate standpoint and everything like that, I just want to give you guys a little background or a little story here, and then you can kind of talk about it from the potential, I guess, of where this would fit in. So most of the people here know my story that I've taught up and down in this class to show the potential of what we do, what we can do in land, where I funded a bank account last year with $5,000. And from that $5,000, I kept doing deals inside of it, growing them, and turned that into, in about 14 months, about $160,000. So that could have been done. That was just to show the potential of what you can do with a small amount of money and keep rolling it over. But if I had put $5,000 in an IRA, I could have done all those deals in an IRA, only pay taxes on that $5,000 going in, right? And then all of that money, so in that Roth IRA, I should be clear that Roth IRA, and then it would have been $150,000 tax-free, sitting there and still growing with interest and things like that, and obviously being able to use it for other things.
And I just want people to understand one thing. To his point, don't look at it as paying the taxes up front. You will get all that money back within 2 years, less than 2 years. Everything moving forward is all gravy. It's all tax-free. Government can't touch 1 cent. You're talking about state, federal, Medicare, Social Security. It is 100% tax-free.
Yeah, and what you pay up front and the fees, because there are obviously fees for working on it. They're not high, but it's so offset with what we can make and things like that, and what you'll pay in taxes. It's not even close. It's like some people look at those things and they're like, "Oh, I got to pay. I'll do a transaction. I got to pay $100 something, $200." It's like that's not. If you make that kind of money, you're going to be paying that way over that in taxes when it's all said and done anyway. So, and you may say, "Well, I want to touch the money." So I don't want to do, I don't want to take $5,000 and turn it into $150 because I need well, then don't do every deal in the IRA. Do half of them in there. Then I would have turned $5,000 into $75,000 tax-free. And then I would have had $75,000 in income. It's like,
Jonathan, keep this in mind though. Whatever you contribute to your Roth IRA, you could pull it out at any time. It's okay to do that. So the contributions you could pull out, it's the gains that you cannot pull out.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. If you'd use it to turn it over into other things, if I put $5,000 in there and turned it into 150, and people are saying, well, I need 100, I need that money to live on. You're talking about what I do for a business. I'm an investor. Okay, well then just don't do all your deals in your eye. It's very simple. Just don't, do half of them or whatever the number is. It's like, I talked about $160,000 in 14 months. It's like I could have done $80,000 in the IRA, and that would have been nice and sitting there. And then I could have done $80,000 in a bank account and using things, and then that would have been my income, to live off of and everything like that. So you can play with this however you want, I guess, moving forward. People need to realize that it's not something they just need to jump in and be like, oh man, it's either all or nothing. No, it's like pick and choose and partner.
And that's what savvy investors do, by the way. They use their own personal funds, but not only their own personal funds, they use their retirement funds the same way. And keep in mind, you could partner with yourself. So if you find a deal, you could partner your 5,000 or your 2,500 from your Roth IRA or 2,500 to partner together to make a purchase. Keep that on the back of your mind too.
Yeah. And Gina's put the code and the link in the thing. We'll actually put it in the video as well. We do have some questions popping up here now. Guys, if you want, feel free to ask your questions in the comments. He can't see that, but I can see it. So I'm more than happy to put those up there. So somebody asked about self-directed 401k. If you want to just touch on that. I mean, he did say he wants to set up a one-on-one call, so you'll be able to talk. But if you want to just kind of give a brief overview for the ones listening.
So when you think of again, self-direction is just a marketing term that we use in our industry. When it comes to self-directing a 401k, the only one is called a solo 401k. You have to qualify for that. How do you qualify? You either have to be a sole proprietor, meaning you work for yourself, and or you have an established C Corp or S Corp that is generating positive returns on investment. I see a lot of people who open these up and their company is not making $1. So why would you open up a solo 401k? You have to have earned income, whether it's you and or your company. The only rule is you have to work for yourself. And the only other person that could contribute is obviously your spouse. Okay.
So somebody else then, I mean, this kind of goes along with that, and I think you kind of covered it. They just asked, they said, how does the solo 401k work? It says, I just have a company 401k now. Why is the solo 401k advantageous? So if he worked for somebody else, he can't do that, or he can because he still has his own company. If you have your own company on top of it, can you do that or no?
No. So if you have earned income from a company, that means you work for somebody else. You're not a sole proprietor. What you can do is open up a IRA. There's nothing wrong with that. So you could contribute to both. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have the means to do so, why not? The only real advantage to a solo 401k, to be honest with you, is there are three. One that you don't have to worry about is you could borrow against it up to 50,000 at prime. Just remember that at prime, and you cannot partner your solo 401k unlike you can with an IRA. And there are a little bit more tax benefits to a solo 401k. I could get into those later because I could sit here for another 45 minutes to an hour talking about the difference between an IRA and a solo 401k. That's like a whole nother topic of discussion, to be honest with you, which if you want, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and we could sit down and have a one-on-one.
Yeah. I mean, guys, that's the key here. I mean, this is just kind of for information and education purposes. Everybody's different. I mean, that's the thing. We're all in different boats. We're all in different spots. We're at different places in life and everything varies. So your best bet is to realize that you want to use the tool, which one, how, all of that. That's up for debate, right? That's where you make the phone call. You have the conversation. They go over all of that with you. I've done that with him already, and say, this is what's best for you. And in this situation and things like that. And obviously as your situation in life changes, you're not locked in. I mean, you can add things, you can, and do things like that too. So that's all good.
You just took the best phrase. You are not locked in. So that person who just told me I have a 401k with my current employer, you're locked in. You have no control over that 401k until you physically leave your job. So with an IRA, with a self-directed IRA, you're in control, not them, you. So you have the availability to diversify outside of the market. So those are the advantages when it comes to self-directed IRAs, is the control aspect of it.
So if you work for somebody and you leave, you say, I don't work for you anymore, but you keep it because some of them let you keep those things afterwards. What happens then? Are you still locked in and you're not allowed to open a solo, or can you now because you're not an employee anymore?
So as long as you're no longer, so like I just mentioned to you on one of the slides, we know this, a little over 50 million Americans either lost their jobs or got furloughed because of this pandemic. So there was a huge shift in movement from the 401k to the IRA. So a lot of people shifted almost $5 trillion into IRAs. Now, whether it's that they learned about it or they were looking for more of the control aspect, we just seen a big movement is what I'm trying to say, because smart investors started to realize that, hey, you're putting $9 trillion into the economy. There's going to be some sort of correction in the market. Inflation is going to go up sooner than later. All of these things are working against you, as I mentioned earlier. The other issue is, the thing that bothers me is I mentioned to you, I showed you there's 61 million IRA accounts that are out there. As I said, this is a staggering number. Out of the 60 million IRA accounts in the United States, only 1.7 of the 60 million have $1 million or more. $1 million or more. Only 1.7 of the 60 million. So my question to you is, what are the other 58 million people doing wrong that these other people are doing right? They're self-directing their funds. That's what they're doing. They're just creating double-digit returns. As I just mentioned to you, the market's only giving you 7 to 10% at best. When you look at alternatives, you're creating double-digit returns at a less, and the fees are staggeringly less. So keep that in mind. For every $100,000 you make in the market, they're taking about $2,000 to $3,000. You have $100,000 at the IRA Club, it's $300. So, and I don't care if you have 10,000, 100,000, or 10 million, it's still $300. Just depends on how you invest it.
Yeah. Powerful. All right. So could you be deemed in the business of real estate and subject to, it says UBIT, so unrelated business income tax, if you were doing lots of your own flips using a self-directed IRA?
All right. I knew that everybody brings up UBIT. Okay. Unrelated business income tax. There's a few things that I do want to mention about UBIT. Just remember one thing. You cannot treat your IRA or your solo 401k as a business. Okay. Let me give you the perfect example. I had a gentleman a few years back at a live event called Elite who rolled over $500,000 from his 401k into the IRA Club. What he decided to do was he found a bank. Keep this in the back of your mind. 99.9% of banks do not like to leverage against an IRA account because they have to do a non-recourse loan, which means they cannot go after the funds within the IRA account. Remember, your IRA account is a trust. It's a separate identity from who you are. So what this person decided to do is, because he found this bank that was willing to leverage against the IRA, he went and bought 5 homes in Indiana. And he leveraged 5 houses. Now he's treating his IRA as a business, not for retirement purposes. That is what would trigger UBIT. So if your goal is to do fix and flips within the IRA account, if I'm understanding you correctly, just remember one thing. When you do a fix and flip, all of the funds have to come from the IRA account. You cannot use your own personal funds. Okay, if that's your goal. Now, if you're looking to contribute to a fund and that fund is doing the fix and flips, you're okay. You won't trigger UBIT. UBIT, by the way,
let's just stop 1 second. Just since we're talking mostly about land here.
Yeah.
This would be buying and then selling land. I mean, there wouldn't be. I mean, the contribution would literally be just the purchase, and then there would be a sale because there wouldn't be there wouldn't be any other work on it or rental. I mean, the only other thing that maybe is if they take it a little bit further into developing surveyors perk test, something minor, but very minor stuff.
Thank you. And that's where I was going with this. So thank you for the clarification. Or for example, if you decide you want to build something on it, a barn or whatever it is, just keep in mind, you want to resell it or whatever, use it for farmland, whatever the case may be. Just keep in mind, all of the funds have to come from the IRA itself. Okay. That's first and foremost. Otherwise you would trigger a prohibited transaction. But UBIT is very rare. It doesn't happen as often as you think. The IRS, think about this. The IRS doesn't care when it's going to get paid its taxes. The one thing that they will look at is the Roth IRA account more than the traditional, because they know that you're going to pay the taxes eventually, whether it's now or later. So if you're doing these little minute deals of 5,000, 10,000 or 100,000, you're not there. No, it's not going to happen. Okay. If you have millions of dollars that you're doing this, then yes, you better believe that you're going to get audited by an IRS agent. All right. Like, as I mentioned to you, there are 1.7 million IRA accounts with $1 million or more. The IRS is not going to chase. It doesn't make any feasibly. It doesn't make any sense. The time, the money, the effort, they know they're going to get their taxes. It just doesn't matter when, now or later. So just when you think of UBIT, I've been here for this company's been here for 15 years. I've been here for 7 years. I've never seen it here. In fact, in the 15 years that we've been here at the IRA Club, we've had zero. Let me repeat that to you again, zero audits. And that's because of our president, Dennis Blitz. And
that right there is huge, because that's where I think people, I know I've heard this, and people want a lot of control. They want a checkbook, and they want to write stuff out, and they want to be able, because those exist, right? That does exist out there.
We do them. We do them.
You do them? Okay.
Yeah.
And then, but if they don't talk to the person that's their advisor, having it is one thing, but just having full control of it and running crazy with it is another. And different conversation, not with you, but I've talked to my CPA about this, and he's basically like, leave it to the professionals. He's like, if you don't know, just ask. It's that simple. So if you're worried about something like that, and can I put money here? Can I mix this? Can I do? It's a simple phone call, right? And you just answered it in 30 seconds with, no, you can't do this. It's like, I want to do this. No, you can't. It's that simple. It's like, or if you do, you're going to trigger this, or if this happens. So be smart with it, people. That's the bottom line, right? It's like,
it's not worth it. It's not, the only reason why I tell people you have checkbook control, if the reason why we've had zero audits is we're a full administrator. The IRS does not bother with somebody who's doing full blown administration. Okay. Truth be told, you shouldn't have control, because this is an ungodly thing that I've seen happen in the past, not here at the IRA Club, but I have seen it happen. If an IRS agent audits you, they don't have to go back 2 or 3 years. They could go back to the day the IRA was established. So if you had one for 15 or 20 years, they could go to the day that it was established. And if they find a prohibited transaction within that, you just forfeited everything. All of those tax benefits are just gone. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's not worth it for a membership fee of $175 for us to do the work for you. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Also keep in mind, if you ever get sued, now remember, perfect example is O.J. Simpson. If you ever get sued, O.J. had $32 million in his retirement account. Hello? I'm sorry, did I lose you? Hello? Oh, not sure. I think we are still live. But let's just use the example of O.J. again. $32 million when O.J., did he do it? Did he not do it? I don't know. But they could not touch the $32 million within his retirement account. Because your IRA is a trust. It's a separate identity from who you are. Why do I bring this up to you? If you do get sued and a lawyer knows that you have a checkbook LLC, do you know what the first thing that they're going to go after? That. Because they know that 80% of Americans screw it up and they trigger a prohibited transaction. Because the rules and regulations, I wish I had it, but I don't. But let's just say it's about 200 plus pages. You're you going to really read all 200 plus pages and find out what the rules and regulations are? No, that's our job. So again, it's not worth it. To Jonathan's point, just let the professionals do it. It's $175. The checkbook LLC, which we open, which if you want control, we'll do it for you. It's $995 plus the $200 for the membership for us to hold it. But I just told you, if we're administering it for $200, do you want to pay the $1,200? I mean, that's up to you. At the end of the day, everyone's goals, everyone's situations are different from the next. I leave that up to you. We offer both, but these are the reasons why I wouldn't want you to do it.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a little internet glitch there. I think you kept going.
problem.
I saw you had different things, but that's true. And I mean, I don't want to break off of what we're talking about here, but that's true. That's something I preach up and down in real estate investing. Is that's where our expertise is, right? We know how to invest in land. We know how to do things right. We teach people that. I'm not an attorney. I don't give legal advice. I'm not a CPA. I don't give tax advice. I'm not an IRA company. I don't, all of these things. It's like, that's why we have other people in there. And when it comes to me, myself, I'm always relying on these people. These are people that you want to have relationships with because they're experts in their businesses. So when you're looking at these things, it's like, people always try to cut corners and they're like, well, if I could just do it, it's like, you're going to cost yourself so much more headaches and money in the long run, and maybe bigger problems by trying to do those type of things than just paying those little fees and things like that and allowing professionals to handle stuff for you. It's just so much easier. So, and just a wiser decision. It's so much wiser. It's like,
and to your point, if you just want to learn, I mean, I just offered the investors kit for $1 and it comes with a free IRA account. So I always preach, educate yourself first, reduce and minimize risk. You get the free IRA account. We handhold you through this whole process so you don't make a mistake. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer. If you're looking at the self-directed IRA route, the investors kit is the way to go. So that's my personal opinion. We're offering it because of your team, Jonah, crushing land. We've had great experiences with you guys, and you guys, again, preach what we preach: education, education, education. That's why we work with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things with it, guys, is, I mean, it's such a small amount. It's like, even if you just put in a little bit, for those of you doing smaller deals, it doesn't take long to grow. I mean, you could be putting in a $500 contribution, doing one of our little $500 land deals that we talk about, turn that into $5,000. That's tax. But now don't look at it from the perspective of, well, it's $5,000 in my IRA. No, because it's $5,000 in there that's sitting in there for the next one. And then if you want to do something else or whatever, especially if you're younger and you grow that, I mean, you could literally be taking, if you're smart about this, you could be putting in one contribution of a few $1,000s, do a few deals in there. And then by the time it's retirement age, you're sitting on millions if you play with it right. So the tools together are hugely powerful. So just something to look at. One other question that popped up here, I guess kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. I guess he's asking more if it exists or how it works. It says for a solo 401k Roth, do you set it up exactly the same way as a traditional solo 401k by forming an LLC with the Roth? The 401k is the member, fund the LLC, and then you're running, basically. So I guess he's asking, is it funded the same way? Is a Roth solo 401k formed the same way as a traditional solo 401k?
It is. Again, it's just, when do you pay the taxes? You can do a Roth, solo 401k Roth. Yes. It's just, you pay the taxes upfront versus tax deferred. So when you contribute the full 19.5, you're not taking the deduction, whether it's from you and or your company. Truth be told, the reason why a lot of companies who are sole proprietor, anyone who is a sole proprietor that opens up a S Corp or C Corp, the reason why they do the solo 401k is because they take that tax deduction, because you could contribute up to 19.5 plus 20% of your earnings. All right. So that's another advantage to the solo 401k. So if you do a Roth solo 401k, You could contribute up to a maximum of $58,000 for the year, right? So that's a tax deduction against your business. That's why a lot of people, for that reason, do it. But if you want to do a Roth, yes. The answer to your question is yes.
But if you put $58,000 in a Roth, it's not tax deductible. You're paying taxes, so you
I'm gonna.
Yeah,
that's
a CPA question, right? You better.
See, that's a big number. That's a big number. But to your point, listen, to Jonathan, to the question, I have so many people that open up SEP IRAs, simplified employee pensions. It's an IRA, right? So what they do is they'll contribute. They'll say their business makes 300,000+. They'll contribute 58, right? And then they'll convert it to a Roth IRA. So that 58,000 now that they're looking to invest, that's going to just generate nothing but tax-free growth, at 12, 15, 20%, whatever it is that they're investing in. You get your money back, as I mentioned to you, in less than 3 years. And everything moving forward is just gravy, as they call it, on top of it.
Yeah.
The icing on the cake.
Can you have a solo 401k with both traditional and Roth components?
Yep, but you have to establish two different ones. So you have to have a solo 401k, and then you would have to also set up a solo Roth 401k. By the way, I should mention to you, when we established them here, they're $365. Carlos Lee, head of investments, extremely well versed in the solo 401k. Him and his team do a fantastic job of setting those up. Shop them around, because other companies traditionally will gouge. I've seen them go as high as $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. So we only $365, a one-time setup fee of $60, and then it's $365 for each year after that. Very, very inexpensive. Oh, and I can
attest to that, because I've had family members in other ones, and they've done it, and I've asked them like what they paid and and it's substantially higher.
And it's much higher. I know that. We know that. Trust me. And also keep in mind, if the 5,500 form, we also do that on your behalf as part of the 365 administration. Most companies or CPAs will charge you about $200 to $500 depending on where you live. So we also do that for free.
All right. I think that's it for questions, guys. So let's thank Ramez for joining us. And I mean, again, as I said at the beginning, this is something you guys want to look at in your business. I mean, not look at, something you want to do. Bottom line, if you're going to be, I shouldn't even say if you're going to be, even if you're not going to be active in real estate investments, this is something you want to do regardless. You're not going to get the same returns, obviously, if you're not investing and being active with it. But for all of us here that are watching these things and doing this, I mean, this is something you want to be jumping on, because it's so powerful. And if you're already older and you say, well, what's the point? Well, then, I mean, you have the advantage of being able to touch it immediately. And I mean, there's a lot of different things that come into play. So that's where pick up the phone, have the conversation, and let them, set that up for you. So again, thank you so much, guys. We've got a bunch more things like this lined up for you, that are people coming in from different things. We've talked about that a little bit in the group and other places. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be announcing that soon, a regular schedule of just people like this that you really want to work with, that can help you take your level to the next business. You can keep concentrating on those real estate deals, but then being able to move things around and do different stuff, working with these professionals that'll really help you get there. So Ramez, again, we thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from different ones. I saw in the comments already talking about, I'm going to set up a call. So you'll be hearing from some.
Great. And I'll see you in Chicago soon, buddy.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah. Have fun. Let me know if you need anything. Have a good day.
Sounds good. See ya.